Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
Ooh, doggy, it is hot out today. You know what I'm saying? Working a theory here at the RV. RVs are interesting. Well, they're just interesting to live in. Ours is well rated as far as insulation goes, but there are some that are so poorly insulated that they really are like tin cans. And so when it gets hot, man, they can heat up and stay hot on the inside. Ours does a good job of holding it out. As far as an RV is concerned, it's not, our walls are not, 6 inches or 4 inches thick. So I think they're 2 inches thick. Anyways, we do a pretty good job, but you still have to play games. And I'm working a theory right now, so we'll see how it goes. But it is hot in the studio today. Also, I don't mind it being hot. That's just people who hear me say that often what they think they hear is Bob likes being hot. No, I just don't mind. Like, I don't mind being hot. I prefer hot over cold. Oh, sweet Lord, yes. I will fall asleep, outside when it's in the upper 80s. I'll just pass out. It's awesome. I wake up sweating. Like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me to be hot. But man, I'll tell you, I work with a guy right now in the cafe, and I'm like, at the time of this recording anyways, I'm working at a cafe, and we work in the morning. And so we get in the morning, and, the door hasn't been open all night, so the temperature is about 72 inside, and he's got all the fans on, and I'm cold. Like, the wind chill factor for me is legitimate. I am cold. And he doesn't get it, and he doesn't change either. And he's been there longer than me, so it doesn't matter that I don't like it. But we're good enough friends where he will, at my suggestion, he will angle one of the fans kind of sideways a little bit so that I'm not in the direct flow of a 40-mile-an-hour breeze, which makes it, for me, it feels like it's 52 in there. So I always pray that we're busy and the door opens up a lot so it'll warm up a little bit. Oh, anyway. I hope you all are having a great day out there. Today I'm looking at the subtle sabotage. Sabotage. It's a weird name. Or word, I should say. I bet you it's French. It just seems like a French word. So one of the things that we did not cover yesterday last week, is this, and I did it on purpose. In chapter 24, verse 14. Was it 24? Private. Oh yeah. So Balak, and Balaam have a private meeting. He says, now I'm going back to my people, but come, let me warn you of what this people will do to your people in days to come. Now, this was after the third round of blessing the Israelites. And Balaam had gone to Balak and said, did I not tell the messengers you sent me, even if Balak gave me all the silver in his palace, I couldn't do anything on my own accord, good or bad, go beyond what the Lord has commanded. I must say only what the Lord says. Now, I'm going to go back to my people, but let's have a little conversation. Then he told them about all this stuff, about what's going to happen. And then, sorry, I have to look these up slowly because, as you know, I don't have all this stuff copied out anymore. Then if we fast forward to chapter 31, it says, Verse 15, it says, have you allowed all the women to live? He asked them. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident, so that the plague struck the Lord's people. So I give you that framework because we're going to take a look at the subtle seduction that happened, and it happened because of Balaam's advice that he gave to Balak in a private meeting. So he didn't do it, quote, in the service of the Lord. He wasn't speaking for the Lord. He basically was like, listen, I appreciate all the money you've paid me. I feel really bad, but I can't curse these people. I can't curse the things that God has blessed. So I'm going to give you some advice. And he told them what to do. He's like, well, we'll go into it. Okay, first, so we're in Numbers 25. The Hebrews had settled on the Moabite border, right? They won the land during battle. The Moabites, they kind of had lost it to the king that the Israelites beat. And Balaam is credited again for the seductive plan. Basically, he was like, use sex, use immorality, not idol worship. Remove the focus, take their focus off of God and God's faithfulness and how much he can be trusted, and move it towards something else. But he knew that if if all the plan, if he said it out loud, like, he knew he'd be in trouble. So it had to be subtle. And if they announced their plan, then the Jews would resist it. So it couldn't be obvious. So this took more than just a few verses to take place, right? This took months of work, months of interaction, travel, invitation between the Israelites who are now, they weren't wandering, which at some level had to feel good. The cloud wasn't moving. They won these lands, these villages by violence. And now they were probably planting crops. They were eating herbs. They had spices. They had wheat. They had places to graze. They had water. Like, they were, I get it. I mean, living in an RV, I get it. Like, there are times when you know you're only staying for a few days, or you might only stay for a few days. You don't get out everything. But we know you're going to be around for a month. Man, you break out the Adirondack chairs that are stored in the back. You break out the little canopies so that you have extra shade. You move the chairs around because they don't have to be strapped to the floor because you have to strap them to the floor when you move, because if you don't, they will move and something will get destroyed. Like, all of that, you start kind of breaking stuff out. And the Israelites are doing that. And as part of that, right, they start to get these invitations from the Moabites and the Midianites. And they get these invitations for their elders to come visit. Come visit. Like, let's work out a trade deal. Let's have a conversation about land and our flocks. And, if you're going to be our new neighbors, like, let's just get to know each other. So both Moab and the Midianites sent, the daughters of rulers over to start having these conversations. And they started with the leadership, and they ended up, infiltrating families and tribal leaders. And what Moab failed to do as a curse, remember, they didn't want to fight. They just wanted to drive them out of the land. So through intermarriage, they were it made practical and political sense. It wasn't, I don't know if it was really an evil plot as much as it was Balaam sitting down saying, listen, guys, they're not going to get cursed. If you want to get along with them, then I would work out deals with them. work out trades with them. And trust me, if you can distract them from worshiping Yahweh, bad things will happen. I know Yahweh. I've worked for him my whole life. I know what the wages of sin are. It's death. And everywhere these guys have turned, every time they've turned away from God, death has showed up. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying what you could do if you wanted to. But it involves, in essence, sacrificing your women. So it says, while Israel was staying in Shittim, the men began to indulge in sexual immorality with Moabite women, who invited them to their sacrifices to their gods. The people ate the sacrificial meals and bowed down before these gods. So Israel yoked themselves to Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger burned against them. The Lord said, take all the leaders of these people, kill them, and expose them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the Lord his fierce anger may turn away from Israel. So basically, this is what people believe sometimes when they read these verses. They say, oh, see, the Lord does want human sacrifice. If you've sinned, you could be called on to be a human sacrifice and publicly executed so everybody knows. And trust me, there are preachers who have publicly executed people from the microphone, from the stage, from the pulpit. They have sacrificed them in the name of, we're going to do what's right before God. I don't believe God behaves like that. We have been over that many times. But the behavior of the Moabites and the Midianites at this point was, for me, at some level, it's also kind of a normal approach. This is a nomadic nation. They moved in along your borders. They plan to go into a neighboring country. Let's not make war with them. So it says that in verses 2 or 3, it says, he invited all them. They invited them to sacrifice to their gods. They ate their meals. They bowed down or prostrated themselves, attached themselves. This often happened like before sex. So the Jewish men evidently would look at these really attractive women. I don't know, I'm not saying the Jewish women were not attractive, but there was something exotic about these women. They weren't the ones you saw every day, right? The classic, I know Disney is not back in my day, it seemed like Disney. I know it's secular. I'm sorry. I'll just bear with this very simple illustration. A Disney, Hallmark. There's another one. A Disney or Hallmark love story where, the local girl is really beautiful and an amazing person, but because she's local and everybody knows her and everybody, she works as a cashier at the grocery store. She's busses table at the bar at night. She's just a local girl. All the good-looking guys leave town. They go to the big cities. They find exotic women. And then one of them comes home and it's like, wait a minute. This girl's amazing. Anyway, so I kind of get like that kind of sort of thing going on here. Like the local girls are local girls, but these girls are exotic. They have all kinds of amazing talents. And look at them. And they're interested in us. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing that'll trip a guy up. If a girl seems interested in them. A guy just fall apart. They just do. And vice versa for that matter. I mean, often if a girl sees a guy and has a guy that's interested in them, they can also do the same. So it's whatever. It was subtle. But the idea of prostrating themselves or falling down was the idea that they would, the women would say, you need to kiss the idol. And it was often, they would have a carved idol like on a necklace under their clothing. And so before you were allowed to have sex with them, you would have to go to a sacrifice of wherever, right? They sacrifice a cow or something. And then you'd have a meal after the sacrifice, probably with the family or at the temple or outside of the temple, a little barbecue. And when that was all done, before she'd sleep with you, she'd have you kiss the idol. And then usually that would, now this is legend. I mean, no one I know of was there, but the writings say that, often they would provocatively, wow, that's a word, unbutton or expose the idol, but it also semi-expose themselves or sometimes completely expose themselves. And this was like, the punch in the gut. Like at that point, the guy's just milquetoast. He just kisses the idol and continues kissing, yada, yada, yada. That's a classic, right? Right out of Seinfeld. Yada, yada, yada. So in verses 4 and 5, right, it sounds like God's calling for the public sacrifice of all these men. He's like, grab all the leaders, kill them in front of everyone. So, Moses says, God says that the sinners must die publicly. Or maybe what he's saying is that sin will lead to death. That sin, those who commit that sin will die. I'm not sure what, but Moses is telling the 70 judges, he's like, you need to kill everyone who had sex with the women who prostrated themselves before an idol. That would be laying down and kissing the necklace or whatever, the pendant of an idol on the woman. Anybody, even if they didn't have sex with them, if they're lying down with them, if they're prostrating themselves before an idol. Again, a lot of times, we read that and preachers will say, they were in the temples bowing down to these idols. Not really. Not saying it didn't happen, but most of them were just kissing the idols that were on display on the women. So in verse 6, while the leaders are like weeping at the tent of meetings, remember the cloud is gone. They're just overwhelmed with what's going on. They're like, this can't be happening. While this is going on, it says a man whose tent evidently was visible. Verse 6, the Israelite man brought into the camp a Midianite woman right before the eyes of Moses. In other words, it was visually seen how they were weeping before God. This guy brings in a woman who clearly plans to have sex with her. He had eaten, he'd gone to the sacrifice, he'd had something to eat, he had kissed the idol, and she's like, all right, let's go have some fun. And off he went. He did not care that literally the 70 judges are right there. And he just opened up his tent and in they went. And it says Phinehas, son of Eleazar, right? Who was the son of Aaron. So Phinehas is the son of the high priest. He left the assembly, took a spear in his hand, followed the Israelite into the tent, and he drove the spear into both of them, right through the Israelite man into the woman's stomach. Man, what do you think they were doing that he could drive it through the Israelite man into the woman's stomach? Now, he could have been standing in front of the woman, trying to protect her. Could have been. Could have been kissing her, standing there in his tent. He could have been laying on top of her. Don't know. Details aren't given. But only one spear killed both of them. The plague against the Israelites had stopped, and those who died in the plague numbered 24,000. So there was all kinds of ramifications going on. Right? Was it killing the two people that stopped the plague, or was it the prayers of the leaders that were praying out in front of the tent of meeting? Moses believed it was the death that led to life. Right? But that's really the thought of idol worship. Sacrifice of something leads to life from the master. something needs to die in order to appease the bloodlust of the god. And that's what I don't know, that I'm not saying it was I guess it was, to me it was a flawed thinking of Moses that we see continuously throughout our studies. He had an idea that God had a bloodlust that needed to be satisfied, and animal sacrifices did the job for the most part, but not all the time. And sometimes people needed to be sacrificed. And that's what Moses was, I believe that's what Moses was preaching to these 70 judges. He was like, the only way that this ends is if we kill everyone who's had sex or kissed the idol on a woman. And that, I mean, we're talking a lot of people, 24,000 people. And so people are dying, and Phineas, they're weeping over this. This is a horrible circumstance. And they believe God is asking them to do this. And they're crying out to God, and in walks a guy with another Midianite woman. And again, this is how we know the Midianites were involved as well with the Moabites. Even though they left after the initial round with Balaam, they pulled out of those negotiations, but they were involved in this because they had a mutual desire to not go to war with Israel, but rather to figure out a way to work with them. So anyways, he walks in with a Midianite woman, and Phineas, the son of the high priest, goes, you know what? Forget it. I'm done. That's it. And he grabs a spear and walks across the street, whatever, the path, pulls open the curtain and just stabs them both. And at that point, it all ends. It's easy to draw the conclusion to say, well, the death of those two people became the final sacrifice God was looking for. So there was finally enough blood on the ground that God was like, whew, I can stop killing people. I just don't think God thinks like that. I don't think he operates like that. I don't think there's a principle in the kingdom of heaven that says, I need so much blood on the ground before I can be good again. And I know putting it that way, without having a conversation with somebody who believes otherwise, is kind of, I know it's taking a pot shot, but that's where I'm at. I don't mean to be disrespectful of those who believe the way I used to believe, which is that God kills people. I definitely believe that for a long time. So I don't mean to belittle their passion. But I also can't stand and believe what they, that way anymore. The Midianites, Phineas ultimately was made a priest, the high priest, right? And it says that he and his descendants would be a covenant of peace was made with them. So the Midianites were kind of singled out from the Moabites, and Moses' 40 years maybe as in Midian, maybe they were singled out because of that. They were like, you had way more access to information about the kingdom of God than the Moabites did. You had not just Moses for 40 years, but you had Jethro. You have a higher responsibility with the information you had. And so the results of that was, we're going to make life rough for you wherever we can. Verse 20, so that kind of wraps up the story of Balaam, right? Now, in chapter 26, you got a census. I'm not going to go through it, but basically a census was given of everyone that was left that was going to be going into the promised land because the season of death was now over. So the 40 years of death, the whatever number of hundreds of thousands, let's just call it 1 million. Let's say 1 million people had to die. I once did the math on that. Probably could have done it again today as to how many people died per day if you did it equally, right? 1 million people over 40 years. But there's a lot of death. But God is saying that season is over. Now we're in a season of peace. All those that needed to die are dead. And now we need to also, start getting into the logistics of going into the promised land and who's going to get what and where and property lines, and all this comes into play for the year of Jubilee, and every 7 years, the year of rest, like all of this comes into play. So we need to know who's getting what. But in chapter 27, you get 5 daughters from the line of Joseph that have no male connected to them. And so they were like, why shouldn't we get land? And so God's like, I agree with him. I mean, Moses goes to God, right? He's like, what am I supposed to do? God's like, well, give them land. Like here we see once again the principle of the kingdom, which is men and women are equal. You don't just ignore them. You give them land. So I think in some ways Moses was kind of excited by that. And I think he's hoping that now that the season of death is over and we're doing a census, and then maybe he'll get some land. And he kind of I think we see an indication of that. Sorry, let me get my phone turned back on. Verse 12. God says, Lord says to Moses, go up to this mountain, to this range, and see the land I've given to the Israelites. After you've seen it, you too will be gathered to your people as your brother Aaron was. I think Moses was kind of, like I said, I think he was hoping, and the Lord was like, I need to make it clear to you, that's not going to happen. But I am going to let you see the land. And that word see is the idea of view supernaturally. It's the idea that there's a spiritual essence to the land, and you're going to see it. Supernaturally, you're going to get to feel the vibrations of the creation. You're going to get to see the colors and the waves of sound that make this land a land flowing with milk and honey. You're going to get to see in essence, the hand of my creation. It's going to be spectacular. It's going to be a view that no one else really is going to understand, but I'm going to give it to you, but you're still not going to live there, because you get the same results that Aaron did for being arrogant and prideful. So in verse 15, Moses says to the Lord, "May the Lord, the God, gives breath to all living things, appoint someone over this community." I think in his own way, he's kind of hoping, listen, those 5 daughters got to inherit the land of Joseph. Maybe my sons will get to lead the people of Israel. Appoint someone over this community. Right? That to me sounds like a man who's probably knows the answer, but he's hoping for a different one. He probably knows who should be the leader of the nation next, but it's not one of his children. So he's kind of passing the decision off to God again, saying, hey, you gave that land to Joseph's daughters. What about giving the nation to one of my sons? They're priests. They're good kids. They've had a long life, right? They're close to 80. Because I don't know when he had them in Midian, but he was in Midian for 40 years. He's been 40 years with the Israelites. So these guys are maybe in their 70s at this point. So I kind of think he's doing that. And the Lord's like, all right, well, take Joshua. Well, he doesn't say that. He's like, the Lord gives breath to all living things, appoint someone over this community to go out and come in before them, one who will lead them and lead them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's people will not be like sheep without a shepherd. And the Lord said, take Joseph, a man who is a spirit of leadership, and lay your hand on him. So he goes through kind of the ceremony that he wants to do with Joseph, and Moses does it. He doesn't fight that. I think a lot of preachers, including myself, honestly, it's easy to give it to your children. Especially if your children are good. I mean, you go through season 1, right? Samuel had horrible children. He still wanted the high priest thing to go to them. And before him was Eli. Eli's children were horrible children. And he thought his sons should still take over high priest. But God was like, no, give it to Samuel. Samuel's like, my sons are terrible, but let's give it to him. And he's like, no. Your sons are terrible. Like that's not how the kingdom works. We try to at least start out with people with good principles. But my kids are all, and I don't take this lightly. My kids are spectacular people. And if I was in a church, I'd be stupid not to work with them. But they're all working in their own churches because where am I? I'm currently in an RV, hoping to find a church somewhere someday. Another story, another time. Here we go. So Moses is told Joshua will lead the people. Moses had trained Joshua, right? Moses had kept Joshua abreast of everything. But Joshua was in the tent of meetings many times. He heard the voice of the Lord. Like, I think Moses knew that this was supposed to be Joshua's gig. He was just hoping. I don't blame him for hoping. I really don't. I give him credit for not just ignoring God and going with his father's heart for his children. I'm sure his sons were always in the loop. I mean, they were his sons. I'm sure they had family meals together. I'm sure that they heard things that God was doing. But the ceremony was very similar to that of Aaron's. Everyone came to the mountain. Everybody saw what was going on. So everybody would know when Moses dies, Joshua is the leader. No politics involved, no voting involved, no money involved, no family line to keep track of. Joshua will be your next leader. I think it was a healthy transfer. I think people understood it. I think a lot of people respected what went on. Because we'll see as when we finally get through Deuteronomy, the next season, we'll get into Joshua, we'll see that the people appreciated Joshua. He was a leader. The spirit of leadership was on him, and we'll learn a lot from him. But we're going to end it here for today, and we will continue the book of Numbers next week on the Epic Narrative Podcast.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Yeah, so I was thinking today, it was kind of weird. I don't know why a thought came to me, but I actually, I have these notes and I'll say things like, I have like 5 pages of notes today. But like I take notes on like a 4x6 piece of paper. Like it's just a little notebook. And I don't know what got me started on the little ones, because I think a lot of times everything would fit on like one legal size note, maybe 1.5, for some of the bigger episodes. But I don't know. I started on these little pieces of paper, probably because that was what was available when I decided to just go ahead and start. And it just has kind of worked for me. I've enjoyed it. And I'll probably continue to use the little ones. I mean, I'm not opposed to big ones. It's sometimes I find myself, trying to find my place, or like flipping on them over or whatever. Or if I have them taped to the wall, like, where did I leave off? And I think, man, it'd be easier if it was just on one piece of paper. But I don't know. This is the way it goes, I guess. And I definitely like it when I had the ability to print off everything, and that I could tape on the wall. Because I'll tell you, going to my phone drives me crazy. Even when I remember to set it so it won't ever, won't lock down, and it just stays open the whole time, it's still a pain to scroll up and down when I'm trying to keep the flow of what's going on and let you guys know that I'm not making stuff up, that it's there or where I'm drawing it from. And then it's like, but anyways, that's just the way it is. I think that Balaam's
approach to giving the Balak the key, so to speak, to defeating him. Like, be subtle, get in there, get married, make treaties, make contracts, figure this out so that ultimately they'll give in to everything. I mean, it clearly worked. And I mean, I'm currently recording, season 5, and I mean, you got it, we're judges, and man, I tell you, every judge, it's like, and the people did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord saved them, and they had 40 years of peace, and then the judge died, and now we did evil in the sight of the Lord. It just keeps going and going, and you think, man, I mean, he wasn't lying. But to be fair, that's just wisdom for anybody. If you don't stay focused on the important stuff, you just lose it. You don't stay focused on the important stuff. It's, in kind of a base level, you could apply it to athletics. Like, hardcore, high-level athletes stay focused on what they need to stay focused on. And then, I think of someone like Michael Phelps because I'm a huge fan of swimming. I love swimming. I did it competitively as a high schooler, and then I did it competitively again when I was in my 50s. I would love to do it again if I ever settle down somewhere and there's opportunity. But I think of someone like Michael Phelps, who went to, 4 Olympics. That's massive amounts of time. He stayed focused on the same thing. He did not play games. He was a celebrity, but he was tough to nail down because he was busy doing what needed to be done in order to stay competitive at that level. But as soon as you get slowed up, as soon as you get distracted, as soon as you start making little compromises, the next one becomes easier and easier. And that's the story of everyone's life. And Balaam gave him that advice, and the guy took it. Maybe he had never thought about it in a spiritual sense before, but man, did it work. Did it work. Anyways, hope you enjoyed today's story, and I look forward to seeing you again next week on The Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.